Welcome, everyone. My goodness, this is such a wonderful thing. I am Pat Leseman, co-founder of the Highland Friendship Club and mom of Michael, who will be 37 in a couple of days. I'm moderating this forum. The Highland Friendship Club Program Committee is excited to sponsor a series of forums such as this to provide you all with information and hopefully some resources in order to begin what I call the journey of discovery when it comes to our son, daughter, or sibling future housing needs. This is a broad and sensitive subject. Each of us have a unique situation. We have different values, different resources, and different abilities. HFC is a community, a special community. So at a minimum, we hope to give you the sense that you're not in this alone. We do not have all the answers or even the legalities surrounding housing options, but hopefully we can be a springboard, a resource at minimum, and support. This is, like I mentioned, this is the first of, we hope to have 3 housing forums or forums regarding housing. And like I'd said, we hope the second one will be in August and the third one will be in September, October. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to strictly hear the stories of our 6 HFC families. They've been invited to describe their son or daughter's housing arrangement and why they chose that housing arrangement. And I think as importantly, and we can all probably shake our heads at this, they will also describe the ongoing support that it is required of them to keep it successful. Each panelist will have 5 to 7 minutes, and then following our 6th presenter, we will field questions. Now, what I'm asking, please, is because of the number, and we're on Zoom and blah, 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 I'm hoping that you'll use the chat to put your questions in. I think it's too difficult. It'll be too confusing for people to just kind of speak up. So if you can put your question in the chat, that would be great. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the chat. If not, it's down below. You can click on it and there will be a text box, and you can simply hit return and the question will be presented. I will field those questions. I will ask the question on behalf of you if it relates to this night's subject. And if it doesn't, and if it relates to something like, let's say you have a question about what does your waiver cover? That will be covered in our 2nd or 3rd series. So know that whatever issues and concerns you have, we will consider that when we put together the next couple of forums. So please don't be offended if we don't get to it. Let's see. So without any further conversation, I'd like to introduce our panel. One is our first presenter will be Rose Fagrelius. She is the my dear friend and sister, I call her, and co-founder of the Highland Friendship Club. She will be our first presenter, and then we have 5 following. So Rosemary, you're on, baby.
Hi, everyone. Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to tell you about our story and John's journey, his housing journey, and kind of share some of our experiences. One thing that I want to say right from the very beginning is that for many of our family members, change is a big deal. And certainly for John, change is a big deal. And I wanted to just share with you that some of our starting our process was really, I feel like it really benefited John. Some of his early experiences, including camping at Camp Courage and Camp Knutson, Camp Hand in Hand, and also his time at Minnesota State Academy for the Blind. For 2 years, he spent the month of June in Faribault at the MSAB, the academy down there, and working on life skills. And I think that really transition period. During high school, he had PCAs, and all of them typically were college kids, and he'd always ask us, where am I going to go to college, and because of John's visual impairment, he was able to qualify for attending Minnesota State Academy for the Blind. So after high school, after he finished at Highland High School, Highland Senior High, he attended 2 years at Minnesota State Academy for the Blind. He went down on Sunday afternoons and came back Friday at noon. He lived in a dorm, and it was a great transition. I always tell everyone that the Minnesota State Academy for the Blind is the best kept secret in the state of Minnesota. I wish everyone had that same opportunity, because it was a great transition from home and us to living, even if it was just 4 or 5 days at a time. It was a great transition. And so after 2 years of Minnesota State Academy for the Blind, John, the staff there informed Stuart and I that we would probably undo everything that they taught John down there about just independent living and making choices and eating and dressing and laundry and everything like that. So we had the good fortune of finding a group home that was just opening. It had one person in it when we first looked at it. It's a 4-bedroom house, so you could call it a traditional group home. And there's 4 bedrooms and 4 roommates. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, it's a group home. I don't think there's anything that's traditional or I guess what I always think about is that nothing's perfect and nothing's permanent, because it's always changing. And, you know, I guess my feeling is that John really now considers that his home. Our family made the decision that John comes home every weekend. He needs to kind of decompress and regroup. And this is what we have decided as a family, that John will come home every weekend. I probably, in all the years that John has lived there, he's probably, I could count on 2 hands the weekends that he has stayed there. And I think that this really helps our family and helps John. And on Sundays evenings, John will always say, I've got to get going. I got to go home. They're going to start missing me. And so I feel like he's really transitioned well. There's been ups and there's been downs, but I really feel that it's been a good place. John has not been to any other. He's lived there since he graduated from Minnesota State Academy for the Blind, and I feel like I have a great communication with staff, with the owner. I feel that the staff, and this is something that I would encourage everyone to do. I did tour lots of different living arrangements when John was just about to finish at MSAB. And one of the big things that I really looked for was, if I pick up the phone, will somebody answer it? Who will be it? I mean, I looked at that at companies that had 300 group homes across the state of Minnesota. I did not want that. I wanted John to be close. John is within 2 miles. We walk to and from John's house. I wanted to be able to get there as quickly as possible, or have John come home as much as he wanted. So I really felt having a good communication with the group home was essential. I wanted to make sure that they were qualified staff, and that they were staffed with qualified people and consistent people. Again, change is difficult for John, and it's really important that he has that. We were really fortunate. We are really fortunate that John's roommates are relatively about the same age, same interests. They really are a little family between them all. They kind of take care of each other. Yes, like sisters and brothers, they do have their days when, you know, somebody talks too much or says something wrong or hurt feelings, things like that. But that's pretty normal for most roommates and most families. But I really feel that we've been very fortunate, and I think that having communication is just so important. Being involved in determining you know, food, what they like. The guys decide what they want to eat. The guys decide what activities they want to participate together separately. They celebrate the seasons and the holidays. They celebrate their birthdays together, and it's just really a very active and good setting. Now, when it comes to answer the question, the big question is how involved we are. We're very involved. I mean, I have to say, we are very involved. John has health issues that continue to challenge all of us. And I feel that, you know, we are medically, we're involved in his. We are still taking on all his medical appointments. We are also, you know, the backup for anything that happens. We do have extended family, so that's helpful when we have situations that we can't be there, which is very, very rare. But we talk to John at least once a day, and I feel that has to happen for John and for us. Because of John's visual impairment, he has limited access. So involvement is everything, and we have to understand, and I encourage all people, and I know Pat had mentioned that we were going to be talking about waivers later in the second event or third event, but it's critical to know what your waiver provides and what the group home or any arrangement is going to be able to offer you. I am very open and happy to talk to anybody. And I think my time is up. So thank you very much. And
thank you, Rosemary.
Exciting venture too.
And there are a few questions in the chat already that may pertain to more than just one of you. So I'm going to kind of hold off on some of those. Thank you, Rosemary. Our next presenter is Anne. Where's Anne? There she is. You're on, Anne.
Great. I really appreciate it, and I certainly have thoughts that resonate with what Rosemary was sharing. Thanks for this seminar. And my daughter, I would like to tell you a little bit about our situation because it has impacted what has happened with our housing search. I am widowed, so I raised Trisha when she was 7 years old and up, and she has a younger sister 2 years younger. So I didn't feel that I had a backup. So I always felt like I need to be proactive with housing. I don't want her moving in a crisis. That's what I said for years. So keep that in mind as you listen to our story. Trisha has developmental disability and autism, and that is also affecting and gave us input as to where does she need to be. And it impacted a couple of living situations pretty drastically. So acknowledging, I think, you know, what is the best thing that we really can do for her in a living situation was where we have come to now. We're on our third living environment. So since at age 21, I started saying, you know, I think you'll be moving around age 25. And, you know, we've kind of prepared. You know, she's built skills. I've seen her grow through each situation. So I just encourage you all to just know that it does happen and it gets more comfortable because it's really, really difficult. Change is very hard. Very quickly, our housing situation is an IHO, independent housing option. We have 24/7 staffing. So don't let independent housing throw you off because we have full staffing. Trisha could never live without 24/7 supervision because of her level of functioning. We rent an apartment in Shoreview as of last November. So this is relatively new. We have to pay all of her housing expense, her rent, food, utilities, etc. And years ago, I never thought she would be in an apartment. I didn't think I would ever be comfortable with it, but I am because of the situation. She's 2 miles away. And I wanted to let you know that the county is covering all staffing costs. So she's on a waiver and we have that covered. I do have to assist her a little bit with the finances, and we needed food assistance, we needed energy assistance to make this go, because she can't afford it otherwise. Based on other tryouts of housing, I want to explain to you kind of what happened before. She was in a 4-person group home initially when she was 25, and it was supposed to be a person-centered approach and run like an independent housing option, and it was not. So she was there just 6 months, and it was not workable for us. And so she was home for 6 months. I networked with other families that I knew from adapted sports, from school. I talked to teachers and work people that Tricia had, just trying to find, is anyone looking for housing? Is there a roommate out there for Tricia? And that was many years ago. So through calling families, I happened to just connect with a family who was buying a townhome for their daughter, and Tricia could move in. And it was like just 8 miles away. The challenge was that they really were not very well suited for each other temperamentally. And Tricia really doesn't need a friend or a roommate to be a friend and to be talking all the time and to be going to things together all the time. Or there were things that were differences that just were kind of, no matter what we tried, we had a lot of interventions, a lot of, working together. It really just didn't work. It was very disappointing. She was there for 4 years. We gave it our all, but the family sold the townhome, and the housemaid is living with her sister now. So there, Tricia came home again. I really, we had nothing else to have her go to. So she came home. She was home with me for 2.5 years. During that time, it was really, it took all of my chutzpah to call agencies, to work with the county case manager, to, try everything under the sun, whether it was foster care I looked at. I had interviews with parents, and Tricia came along. We met roommates, potential roommates. We toured apartments. It was really hard, really, really hard. But I always said, I don't want her moving into crisis. And she did move into crisis then last July. Last July, I had a health problem and I couldn't care for Tricia. She moved to emergency respite for 4 months. During that time, the team looked at, what are we going to do? And the best option, Tricia wanted to be in a situation where she had no roommate. She wanted to be living at home, of course, forever. But we see her, I see her, her sister sees her. But what I want to tell you is that then, we found this apartment. The staffing company helped me tour apartments. They helped me find resources to pay for things like the energy, toward the energy, etc. So again, it just takes a lot, but it can turn out well. Since last November then, Tricia's been living in her apartment in Shoreview. The things that I need to do to support it, from an emotional standpoint, I have to accept the fact that it's not going to be as good as what I can do for her at home, right? But that's not always true. And then to equip her to build skills and to have that sense that, hey, this is pretty good. There's some good things with this. We're working on, expectations. So like Rosemary said, we have to have constant communication, good communication with the staffing team. We call it Team Tricia. I talk to the supervisor probably twice a week. We have an hour meeting every week. Everybody has to know, what is she doing? Does she have appointments? Am I picking her up? A lot of scheduling. So that is primarily what happens for me, is just communication a lot. Tricia can call me if there's some problem. But I
And
want
recording, real quick, Ann.
okay, good.
I don't mean to, but
Yeah, good. So clear expectations of what's expected of Trisha, that she can hopefully work things out with her staff and not call me every time. That wouldn't be healthy. And then empowering her and just letting go a little bit. So I will let you go to the next person, and I'm happy to be answering questions, offering resources later. Thank you.
yeah, thank you, Ann. Thank you, Ann. Our next presenter is Jackie Bunch. Or I'm sorry, it's Jamie. That's Jamie.
I better unmute myself. Woo. Hi, everybody. It's really fun to see your faces. And a lot of you I don't know, but some of you I do. So that's great. So I'm Jamie, and I'm the mother of Sam Hesla. And Sam has Down syndrome, and he's 30 years old. And he's been living in his own duplex for 5 years now. He's going on the 6th year. And I'm married to Brett. And I often think that this would be really hard, what we're doing. If I was all by myself, I would probably do some things differently. Sam does not have any medical needs. He is very talkative. He's very inquisitive. He, before COVID, he worked 20 hours a week at Carboni's, was extremely busy, took Uber here and there. But the way our journey started was that I went to some conferences and learned that people with Down syndrome as adults are often really depressed. And I began to think about why, and thought, I bet it's because they're not very independent, and that perhaps we need to help Sam to become more independent. So we talked a lot about that. He started in high school cooking 1 meal a week for us with his PCA. We talked a lot about independence. When he went to Transition Plus, we asked for him to be in some classes that were not designated for him. And one of them was the apartment training class, which he took twice. And we told him how awesome it was going to be that someday, just like his sister, he was going to get to live in his own place. And so we tried really hard to foster that and to talk about that. He did not have a waiver, but he knew that a waiver was tied to his being able to live outside the home. So when the social worker at that time was a Hennepin County social worker was over for a visit, Sam said to the social worker, you need to, and he really did say this, he said, you need to get me a waiver because I am too old and I cannot live at home anymore. So literally, we were blessed because that particular social worker sat at the table when they made decisions about who got waivers in Hennepin County. And so Sam got a waiver. Then we didn't know what to do. So somebody told us to talk to Jerry Mellum, who's this worker in Hennepin County. And really, I have to say that the things that Jerry talked to us about are like really straightforward and somewhat simple, but like the other two have alluded, and for all of you maybe too, it's extremely scary to think about your child who has so many needs living in any other place than your home. So Jerry helped us to figure out like what to do first, second, and third. So by the way, also we looked at every kind of housing option you could imagine. We met with some families for like maybe, I don't know, 6 months maybe. And they decided to rent a place and have all of their young men, there were 3 other of them, to live together in a rented place and to have more staffing. So we didn't want that much staffing for Sam, and we figured he didn't maybe need it. So I want to say this too. A lot of people say to me, oh, your son must be just so capable, but he can't read beyond a maybe first grade level, maybe second. He can't do any money. He can't tell time very well, but he's really learned how to use his cell phone to get him places. And so anyway, we decided that we would rent a duplex and we would find a housemate that was a typical housemate. So we rented a duplex. It was only 3 blocks away, and I'm really thankful for that. Then we just emailed everybody we could think of in our church community, in our friendship community, to our relatives. and found a young man that had never done any support of any person with a disability in his life. And we were really happy for that. We didn't want him to be treated in a medicalized or a staffing kind of a way. We just wanted a housemate. And that worked so awesome for about 2 years. And he's had other roommates too, and that's been great. So we also wrote up a housemate contract, which if any of you are interested in, we can send it to you. It's not legal, it's not binding, but it says exactly what is expected of that person. And primarily they're expected to be there from 11 to 7. And then to make sure that Sam's not dead and he comes home. And that sounds awful. That's not quite true. And like to have a meal once or so a week and to hang out a little bit, but to otherwise just be free to live their lives. So then Sam also, that's through a place called AcraCare. They had never at that point had something like a housemate thing. They'd never done it. So they were great. They hopped on it. They figured out how to do it. So the housemate gets rent, utilities, $40 a week for groceries, and then they get paid $1 a day for supporting Sam. Then Sam has a personal support person who comes in maybe twice a week, twice a week, and they cook meals together, and those meals kind of last for the rest of the week because Sam, before COVID, was super busy. So that's what that time was for, and maybe to help him to clean his room if he wanted that. Sam has become like king of this duplex, so he cleans and takes care of it a lot himself. And at that time, before COVID, I probably saw Sam once a week on Saturdays, and that was it. And I eventually did not even talk to him every day because I knew that the safety net from so many people that he was involved with, somebody would call me if there was a problem. So I got to look at my paper here. So we hire these people. They're not hired by any, the agency does not do any hiring. We do it. We have that housemate contract. We have a personal support care job description that I could share with you too. It's really more just a posting for a job, which we're doing now again. And then we meet with those two people at least monthly, maybe every other week. It depends on the person and how well we know them for maybe an hour or two. And then Sam pays his own bills with the housemate. They write the checks for everything. But Brett and I manage all of the finances, and I do all of his, I would say I'm the person that does like the case management. I'm the one that makes sure, like Highland Friendship Club, I sign him up for all of that. I make sure that I know when he's working. I know when he's not. I know that he's volunteering on Saturdays here. I know he's working at Wilderness Inquiry there. I know that he's going to this event with his cousin in this evening. So I'm the one that organizes all of that because there's not a staff person to do that. I would say that it's a very intensive method in that regard. Mm-hmm. When COVID happened, Sam's housemate moved out. And if you can believe it, he lived alone for 8 or 9 months. And his new person is coming in August, who he's known this woman. She's awesome. And I'm super excited. And I actually hope that someday we could entice her to actually take over more of case management for Sam. And they want eventually to live in more of a house that's community centered, but that would probably only have Sam as a person with a disability. I've learned that one-on-one, it's pretty intense for a typical person to live with a person with a disability. The ratio is better if it's maybe 2-3 people without a disability and one with. This isn't going to be forever. My life wasn't like, I didn't live in the same house forever. I had numerous experiences. They helped me grow. I met people, I lived with people I didn't like. I lived with people that I hit it off with. And so I keep saying to myself, it's okay that this isn't permanent. It's just scary. And that I have other ideas about how I think in the future it might go. I've got lots of other ideas too, because I don't think this will last forever. But it might. I could be wrong.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. Next we have Jackie Bunch.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Pat.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Pat said I'm Jackie Punch. My daughter's Kirsten. She's 31. She's autistic. She's technically nonverbal, but she has thousands of words, and she's highly vulnerable, really big variation in skills. Some things very competent, some things not at all, with very poor auditory processing. I'm very proud of her. If someone had told me we'd have the situation we have now when she was younger, I wouldn't have believed it. She's lived for 8 years in a supported living apartment in a regular apartment building that's supported by Fraser. There are 12 clients there. They're either in single or double apartments. Everyone has autism. Part of it is you're supposed to be, COVID really messed with this, but able to work and out working 9 to 2. There's supervision on Monday through Friday. There's supervision available. But that 9 to 2, so it's not fully 24/7, but during COVID, they really made arrangements and stepped up to be supportive during that time. I think that when she moved out, she was indicating kind of, she saw her brother go to college similar to Rose. She saw, I have a lot of similarity, I think, to Anne in a lot of things she said. I was a single mom and she has one brother, he's going to college. She wanted to be out, and it was not a serious health issue, but I had a health issue that really scared me. And I felt like I wanted to be in control and make sure that she was settled and that she could live on her own finances and resources primarily. I got to give a shout out to Rose. It's really hard to move your kid. And I talked to Rose a couple of times at Friendship Club events, because at the beginning I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work. She started with a roommate, but we moved pretty quickly to being one-on-one. Candidly, I was on the board at Fraser twice. I trusted them, and they didn't have a supported living option in St. Paul. So I really partnered with them, and Kirsten was the first person who signed on to move into this situation. There are ups and downs, as everyone's been saying. It's not perfect. I don't think Kirsten would have done well in a group home setting. Because of her special needs and the auditory processing, a lot of noise, a lot of chaos is very hard on her. Plus she had so much independence. So this has worked out really well, but not perfect, as many people have talked about. She can hang out with clients. They'll go on group walks now that we're coming out of COVID again, or they have a community dinner once a week, but she's really pretty much on her own with supports. Like I'm happy to meet with others individually if they want to talk about it, but we have security systems set up so that she's safe if someone is not with her. Sadly, she had a medical event, but the positive side of that was in 2016, she qualified for more one-on-one support, which is really great, but she also has supported employment. She has companion care. So there's a team Kirsten, just like we heard about Team Trisha, et cetera. I think one key is having a really strong case manager, someone who will really work with you and help you to make sure you've got the right team in place. And then let me just see here. So support we need to provide for success. On that, there is a team, Kirsten, and we meet quarterly, and that's my decision. They would go with twice a year or annually, but because of her being nonverbal, it's really, and because there is staff turnover, we've been very lucky that her primary caregivers have stayed around a while, but there's always turnover, different people on some weekends or evenings. Like you've heard from many people, we haven't made it a firm commitment, but we usually have her every Saturday night because we want to. As my son said to me, hey mom, I like to hang out with my family on the weekend, and so it was important for us that she knows, we love her and we're there. Similar to Rose, Sunday afternoon, she's like, mommy, back to my apartment, because she wants her space and her independence. I think it's really important. You've heard it from others. I don't think I don't think I have to have a daily phone call or a weekly phone call, but the staff of all her organizations, housing, employment, and companion care, they all text me once a day at the end of their shift, so that I know she can text me too, but it's not always accurate. She reads very well, so sometimes I know what's going on and sometimes I don't, because her ability to advocate for herself is really not strong at all. I'm watching the clock. Staff changes can be really hard, so I'm involved in training. Her waiver pays for a lot. She also has a mental health arms worker, but anything like Highland Friendship Club, speech therapy, we do some fitness therapy and music therapy. I cover that for her. But we've tried to build up some boundaries. I want her to have as much independence as she can. And so, you know, I know where I need to be involved and where I don't. And it's really allowed me to be her mother. I certainly have big caregiving responsibilities still, but it's not every minute of every day, which is, I adore her, but that's really hard. And it's allowed, you know, I have other children, a relationship, grandkids through him. It's allowed us to have, I think, a fuller life and for her to have a fuller life. And then wanted, you know, similar to what I've heard from others on the medical piece, you know, I really stay engaged in that because she can't advocate for herself. And so I want to make sure, like, there are notes in her records in the spring when this happens, this is what it usually means, so that if I'm not around, when we're not around, some of those things are really covered. I've chosen also, they run her EBT through in supported living, manage her cash and food stamps, SNAP, but I see the report monthly, and I can use the EBT if we need it, but I've chosen to still be financially responsible at this time. That'll have to change in the future, but I still cover and do all her reporting for county, Social Security, et cetera. So you've heard it before, really have your child. It's really hard to have your child lead home. And there are certainly ups and downs after. It's kind of like, think of it like elder care almost, but remember, nothing's perfect. And overall, I still think it's really been wonderful for Kirsten and for us. So it's tough, but it's worth the investment.
Thank you, Jackie. Next we have Renee Prizker. Hi, Renee. Whoops, Renee, you're on mute. We're not hearing Renee.
Hey, Renee, oh, there we go. Oh, I'm sorry, Renee. One more time. Sorry, Renee. There we go.
Whoops.
Shoot. Let's try this one more time.
I hit on.
There we go.
Should we go to the next person?
No, we can hear you.
You can hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
So our approach to this is, if it's not working, build it. We lived in this, my son has lived in the same neighborhood his whole life. He's 36 years old. He's severely handicapped, both physically and cognitively. He does not speak, which is a huge factor in how we decided to proceed with his future care and housing situation. He has many neighborhood friends. Some I know, some I don't know. I can go just about anywhere in our little community around us, and I'm known as Jake's mom. He is not known as my son. We wanted him to stay in the neighborhood that he knows and loves after we're gone. And we started looking at housing options when he was about 20. At that time, we were living in a 100-year-old home with no full bath on the first floor, and all the bedrooms were on the second floor, and there was no feasible way to add an elevator. And getting in and out of the home and to the garage required negotiating steps. We worked with a realtor over the course of just about a decade. We looked at properties all over St. Paul. We were looking at duplexes. We were looking at small apartment buildings. We were looking at houses next to each other. We even contemplated waiting for the Highland development. And as our realtor said, you'll be dead before you could build there. So our criteria for a home for Jake was that he be fully established and settled before we die, that it either be a duplex or adjacent homes, that all the doors were at grade with no steps for wheelchair access, that there be an elevator, that it was totally accessible, wide doorways, accessible bathrooms, safe kitchen, large windows for Jake because he likes to look out at the world and he's not good at moving around independently on his own, so he's on the floor a lot. Heated floors, and about 101 other things that I wished we could have addressed in our home over the years. He needed to be in a quiet neighborhood. We had looked at some properties on Grand Avenue, but Jake does not sleep well. And once he's a very light sleeper, once he's awake, he's up for the night. So if it's at 1 o'clock, he's up for the rest of the day until the next night he goes to bed. We wanted rooms for caregivers to sleep and potential space for another roommate and a connected heated garage. Those were our criteria. It became pretty clear looking at properties, the only way to do this was to build new. And the property that we purchased was 2 homes away from the house that Jake grew up in. It was owned by his uncle and aunt for 35 years, and they and their children gave us our blessing to start new. And we took down their house after a couple of years of litigation with the city, and we began building. The present situation that Jake has now is he lives in his own home. It is across the driveway from our home. Both houses are fully accessible. We wanted a situation where we could live out the rest of our life in our home and not have to be in assisted living or in a care facility, that we could have care come into our home and that we would be right with Jake. Initially, we thought that Jake would have a roommate. Other parents convinced us not to do that. And the reason why is we are not using an agency to provide care services for Jake. We do all our own private hiring, and parents who had kind of been in charge of a house, purchased a house, had roommates came in, said, you know, you kind of get in a pickle because if a caregiver doesn't show up or somebody goes on vacation or has a medical emergency and you're short-staffed, you're there. So other parents, you know, aren't as able or flexible about coming in and watching their child if you're right there to do it. So, and we did not want to hire a provider because of control issues. I wanted to hire all my own staff, and if Jake had a roommate, I wanted to select who that roommate and who that family would be. It's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than I thought it would be. I thought at this point I would be in a more of an independent situation. Right now, because of COVID, we're having a hard time getting full-time staffing. And I sleep there most nights. We do have care during the day, but you know, it's still a lot of work. I do all the cooking for the house. But Jake loves it. When his caregiver comes in the morning, I get the wave. And if I don't leave right away, he goes and gets my purse and hands it to me. Same when his dad comes over in the evenings, you know, even when the caregiver's there, his dad will come and watch TV with him. Usually after about a half an hour, he hands his dad his shoes. It's like, time to go home, Dad. But he really loves it. I was talking to another parent who did the same thing for their child, and they're living in a duplex. And they live upstairs and their child lives downstairs. And they too agreed there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in planning for the future. Someone will have to be hired to be me, in addition to having caregivers there. So someone to do the hiring, firing, supervising, well, we haven't had to fire anybody, but supervising, ordering supplies, that sort of thing. We do have an adult daughter who's very involved in her brother's care. She just bought a house probably about 6 or 8 blocks away, so that she could be close. But I don't want her to be me. And this mother and I were recently talking, and she said, well, if you go first, I'll take Jake. And if I go first, you take my child.
And what did you say to that?
I said, hopefully either of us won't have to do that.
Right.
So,
Oh, Renee.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say if you could wrap it up and we'll go to the next. Appreciate that. Are you done, Renee?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Renee, very, very much. Our next and last presenter is Rachel Nelson. And where is Rachel? And Will, Dad Will Dad. Thank you.
Our son Dan is 31, and he has 2 brothers, one older and one younger than him. And throughout his growing up years, he was always wanting to do what they did. And one of the early meetings that we started going to, probably when preteen years, I don't remember if it was a Down Syndrome Association meeting or PACER or something. One of the parents on the panel said that if at all possible, try to keep your child on a similar timeline as their peers or siblings as far as moving out of the house. So when his brothers flew the coop and off to college or on their own apartments, it's time for Dan to find a place. And this was about the time when group homes there was a moratorium. And we really did not want him to be with a group where he didn't have some control over who his caretaker would be, what activities he participated in. Sometimes he likes to go bowling, but sometimes not. And so a weekly bowling outing with 4 or 5 people in a group home just didn't seem like the right thing. I'm a realtor, so I help many people in the community to find different types of housing options for their children, from buying duplexes. I worked with a provider on group homes before the moratorium. And so it's always been kind of in the back of our mind, what would work for us? There was a family in Minneapolis that bought a 4 or 5-plex, and each of the guys, they'd all been buddies throughout school, each got their own apartment, and then there was another apartment there for a caretaker to be in. And this just kind of seemed like an ideal situation. We were dreaming. And lo and behold, we had the opportunity to buy a small 4-plex, and we're able to put in a 5th unit in the basement. So there's a unit that is less expensive, and so far we've been using it for caretaker to have a reduced rent situation and spend some time with the guys. Dan has a roommate, it's Charlie. Many of you probably know Charlie. Charlie lives with Dan in their apartment, and the apartment below them, Charlie's mother lives. And so we have someone in the building who cares about the guys regardless. The other units at this point in time are typical tenants, although our dream is that at least 1 or 2 of the other apartments may become peers for the guys in a situation that might work for them. Will does most of the Dan care these days, making up for the many years that I did it all. And so he is going to take care of talking about the support systems that we've needed to put in place over there and how we are managing or not managing.
Hello, everybody. Well, we've, as soon as we got this place, we didn't want to be the primary support. And like Rachel says, we developed the lower level apartment that was good for a caregiver. And most of the time we've had caregivers there. The other important thing is, she said there's one other person in the apartment building that cares about the guys. Everybody that lives in that apartment building cares about the guys, because the guys take care of vacuuming the front and back stairs, the common areas, and they see them in the laundry rooms, and everybody loves Dan and Charlie, and they like living in the building. Bringing cookies, right? They organized a cookie exchange, this year at a holiday time. But, it's just your typical figure out what needs to be done. And what is that? Mostly it's food and transportation, right? Keep them fed, keep clothes on their backs, and, get them where they need to be. What do you say? Both Dan and Charlie are employed. Charlie, before the pandemic hit, was taking the bus from the corner up to his job at Harmar. Dan's job is not so convenient for public transit to get there and back. So he has a person that rides bike and whatnot with me that is glad to make a few dollars an hour being his personal support attendant on that's about the right personal support person, but and she also helps them on Mondays. She'll take Dan to the grocery store after work and get whatever it is that she's going to help them fix for dinner. And then we've always had this thing where so that's Mondays taken care of. Rachel and I, or whoever we can find to be a personal support person or just a friend to do it, we'll take care of dinner with the guys 2 nights a week. Barb Jenkins will do 2 nights a week. And then there's 2, generally, Saturday, if there's nothing else, they can eat leftovers or whatever. And then 1 day at least of family dinners usually on Sunday nights we'll get together. But it's just a matter of figuring out what support your person needs, documenting them, as people have said, Jamie's contracts and whatnot, and be sure that's written down so the potential support people know what's important to you, know what's important to the person being supported. But Dan and Charlie have a good time. They are very proud of themselves. They've both advanced a lot more than either family thought that they would by being exposed to our rather eccentric menu choices. Charlie Jenkins eats a lot more things than his mother ever thought he would, and a lot healthier things than anybody thought he would. And but they're independent enough. We've taken them to the Green Line station with a couple of Twins tickets and enough, dollars to get a hot dog and a drink and whatnot. And sometimes I'll tell the Twins, hey, these guys are coming, and they'll look after them a little bit, but usually they're just on their own. And they're very happy. They seem to be really happy together. The staff is always a challenge. And, if you can get 2 years out of somebody, you're doing great. But that's the thing is, finding those people is always a challenge. It's going to be more of a challenge when we're not around. So that's one. That's why it's so important to document the guy's needs and wants, so that, when we're not around, there's still something, a roadmap for the support. Yeah, his brothers are out of state, and God knows they're probably never coming back. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think these stories have all been very interesting, and I'm hoping helpful to some of you. I'd like to get to some of the questions while we have 15 minutes. And And I think this question would pertain if maybe, well, for sure, 3 of you could answer or chime in. And is there a lot of staff turnover? Who would like to address that? Rosemary? Anne? Jamie? Whoops, you're on mute, gang.
The person that owns John's house it's a small company. It's all he has 7 homes. They're all are in Highland Mac Groveland. And I think that he pays them very well, and I think that helps with the turnover. That said, I think, as many of you mentioned, you do a lot of training, you do a lot of communication with each one of them. If there's additional training, for example, our son John suffers from seizures, and so we asked that the company do extra training in the seizure management, and so they did. So I feel like communication and training is really important, and a company that really values their employees is extremely important, and I believe our company does.
Thank you, Rose. Anne, would you like to chime in there, and then we'll move to the next question?
Real quickly, we have been so fortunate because we have 2 ladies who are in their 40s who have stayed with Tricia for the 4 years she was living in the townhome, and they followed her because they like her and she likes them. So that has helped 2 out of the 5. We've had the good fortune of having one for almost a year now. There have been several others that have turned over, some of which is sleep staff, so it isn't that much of an impact, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and they're gone. But it is troubling, certainly when there's staff turnover. So training is key. And sometimes it's just not a fit, personality wise or something, but we've been fortunate. I'll let you go.
Okay, next, yes,
Can I just say one quick thing?
absolutely.
Kristen's really fortunate that she had a couple one-on-ones that each, like Will's point, stayed at least 2 years, and that was really important. But a side benefit, even though the turnover's been hard, she has gotten much better at being able to adapt and meet new people. So I just wanted, and be okay with that. So I wanted, most of the time, not all the time, but wanted to say that.
Just personally, my observation with my son and with many others is that I think our kids with disabilities are far more flexible than our other children will ever be. Not that staffing change or turnover is any easier, but I've always felt that the Mikes of the world are always far more flexible people than we are. Anyway, next question. Rosemary, I think this is you are the other. Yes.
Can I say something too?
Yes. Thank you.
We've, because we hire them ourselves and AcroCare pays for them, we have about a 2-year turnover. And I think part of it is that we meet with them really often. And I also try to find young men that are about Sam's age. So obviously as he ages, that's going to become more difficult. But I think that is a part of it. And I want to just agree with you, Pat. I think I have a lot of grieving over some of the turnover because there are some remarkable young people. And some of them have stayed in his life forever. And that's been really powerful too.
Sure is. Rosemary, I think this pertains to you. Are the other residents visually impaired?
No, they're not. No, they are not. And, that's been a bit of a struggle, but I will tell you, as I mentioned earlier, I just feel like John's roommates really help him, and it's not been a problem.
Okay. Thank you, Rosemary. Jamie, where do you post your job descriptions?
I email them or post them with organizations that Sam's involved with. So first of all, I go through my email list and I literally send an email to each person individually. So it doesn't look like a group email. and I ask them to be on the lookout for people that might be appropriate. And then I will, like Sam last time, hired his own person by walking in the door of WI where he works or is a volunteer, and handed the person he wanted to work with him the job description, and that person's been with him for 2 years. So WI Carboni's where he works, that there was a young man then that wanted to do support for Sam because he knew him. In the past, it was teachers, old PCAs, family. I've posted things up at the co-op, places that are around our neighborhood, and that are kind of like-minded to who we are. The Y, not posting them at the Y. I'm careful. He'll give them to people he knows.
Okay, thank you. Jackie, is your daughter still living at a Fraser apartment? Whoops, you're on mute, Jackie.
Go. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Sorry about that. I was trying, it seems like there's an echo. Yes, she's been in the same building for 8 years. She moved out at the age of 23. And as I said, ups and downs, not perfect, but yep. And I don't know that it'll be forever either. But it's been good so far.
Thank you. Toby, your question will be answered in the next series, so hang in there with us with respect to how to get started with the county. So hang in there, and thanks for joining us. Rachel and Will, how is the caregiver in the 5th apartment paid?
We go through LifeWorks for fiscal support, if you will. They really just, I do the hours reporting and they write the checks. They also, do the background checks to filter out the axe murderers and whatnot. That's always a good thing, right? So.
Okay. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I think that it was extremely helpful to hear the journeys, and like we'd said in the beginning, everybody's journey is different and everybody's ideas are different. But I think what I've come away with is you're on this job till you're 6 feet under. And I think that the more people we can bring along the way, and I liked this one, I forget which person said to document in case the meteor hits your house or something, I think is important. And so I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And if there are any other questions that you think about over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to give you my email address, and I'd like you to email me these, because we're going to be planning session 2, which I think we're pretty sure we're going to invite some housing providers to talk about what they do. And then eventually corral a couple of, maybe a Hennepin and a Ramsey County social worker to come on and answer some questions about that end of the world. But we'd really like to tailor this forum on housing, the series, around what you want to hear. And then if you want to ask a specific panel member a question, rather than exchange this information here, shoot it to me and I will get it to them. And yes, this is being recorded. And Heather can talk about that before we end. But my cell phone number, very happy to give this out, is 651-307-0096. My email is D as in dog, LESEMAN @comcast.net. And I hope you've all enjoyed this. It's a tough subject, but I think everyone knows how important it is to begin the tackle. We have about 5 minutes. Anybody else would like to say something? Renee?
Pat, yes. 2 resources that might be helpful for people. I have not used them, but I've recently heard about them through our attorney who handles special needs issues. teamemployer.com. If you choose to private pay your care and you're funding it with a special needs trust or a supplemental needs trust, this is an option for hiring your staff. You still pick them out, but they are the employer, so that because your special needs trust and your supplemental needs trust are not immune from like an HR lawsuit or those sorts of things. I think they're out of Boston. I just looked at them online. I don't, but he knows a lot of people who uses them. The other thing is if your child is on governmental benefits and they're spending their government money for things, as you know, you can't spend it on a lot of things like food or things like that. And there is in effect a cash card that you can get. It's truelinkfinancial.com. And you can limit with this card what they can purchase. So if they go to a gas station, maybe they're allowed to get gas for the vehicle their aide is driving them around in. They can't buy food there. So it's a way to make sure that they're not inappropriately using their government benefits and putting them at risk.
Renee, did you say True, T-R-U-E?
TRUELINK financial.com.
Thank you.
And it's been posted in the chat.
All right.
I would also add, and I think many of you probably already know this, but it's really important to write life plans for our children, so that, again, like some of you have said, if something happens to us, people know all of the different aspects of our children's lives, including who their friends are, and all of that. And then we share that with the social worker as well as with other potential guardians.
Mhm. Can I add, we were registered with RUMI, R-U-M-I. It's a possible option for people to find roommates. It's a little bit wide exposure in terms of, you're not too aware of exactly who's really contacting, but they screen everyone who is registered in order to contact you. It did not pan out for us to find anyone through there. So I don't even know whether I should mention it, but it is out there. It's a computerized, way of an agency letting you know if someone else is looking for a roommate, and you write a roommate profile. Do you want the person to be a non-smoker? What kind of issues or priorities are there, et cetera. Real quickly too, like Lutheran Social Services, they do many services in terms of staffing. We use Dependable Home, who just increased the hourly pay to PCAs, or personal support people now, they call it, to $17 an hour. So, yeah, that's just a couple of miscellaneous things from me.
Thank you, everyone. It was great. First of all, seeing you all. It'd sure be more fun in person. Panelists, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye now.